Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Jeremy Schwartz, and I am the Digital Strategist for NetScaler here at Citrix. I am joined today by Mike Spanbauer, VP of Research and Strategy at NSS Labs, as well as George McGregor, Darshant Bhagat, and Lena Yaravaya from the Citrix team. In today's session, we're going to first hear from Mike about the challenges of protecting your applications and infrastructure, and how this is evolving as attackers move up the stack to the application layer. He will show how a well-designed Web Application Firewall can address these challenges. He will introduce the role of NSS Labs, their approach to independent testing of security solutions, and summarize the results for the Citrix WAF and why is it a recommended product. Finally, the Citrix team will give more detail on the unique features and value of the Citrix WAF and how it fits into the Citrix Secure Digital Perimeter. We will have a live Q&A session toward the end of today's event, and you're welcome to submit your questions during the presentation at any time. Simply type your question into the Ask a Question window and click Submit. Also, we are recording this event, and the on-demand version will be available from the same link that you used to join today. So feel free to come back, watch the archive, or share it with your colleagues. And now let me hand it over to Mike.
Thank you, and welcome, everyone. So today we are going to dive a bit into one of the more exciting security technologies that enterprises deploy, as well as recent results from one of our most popular tests, which is the Web Application Firewall test. We've ran this test a few times, and Citrix has performed very well in both, but we'll share more of the detail here in a moment. Before we dive into those details, though, just quickly an agenda. As mentioned, I'm Mike Spanbauer. I run the strategy function for NSS Labs. It's my role to investigate and engage with enterprises which technologies are most challenging, and to help iterate and develop new test technologies, as well as to ensure that those reflect the real deployment models, the real-world use cases for those technologies, so that we can help others make those product selections more quickly. It's difficult picking the right technology for your organization, and NSS Labs is here to help. So, very briefly, for those who perhaps are not familiar with NSS Labs, we have one very simple mission. It's to advance transparency and accountability within the cybersecurity industry. As I mentioned a moment ago, our role is to help enterprises make decisions more quickly by cutting through some of the, the FUD, the hype, and/or the mist, and getting to the root of how capable the technology is for a given use case or multiple use cases. How does it fare against the most advanced and/or latest techniques employed by threat actors, as well as how would it and/or does it influence the performance of an application stack within your enterprise? As no security product should be seen or felt, but those that are, hopefully it's a slight footprint. So these are the components that compose really our content output and what we seek to provide enterprises when we go about developing a test. That motion is something I get asked a number of questions about, though. And so when it comes to developing a new test and looking at a category for inclusion and new testing, so we have a very rigorous set of activities and discipline around that practice. So there is both a survey that's done, primary market research, to engage with enterprises to assess their challenges, how are they best going about solving for those, as well as we engage with all the vendors in a space to get a sense as to how each approach this unique problem set, and we discuss and ensure that the test cases that come out of that represent both that common real-world use case, the way enterprises are planning to use these technologies, as well as that it does not unfairly position or limit the capabilities of any vendor's offering by potentially excluding something that is a part of the core product capabilities. And so the selection process is by way of both market share, so clearly market dominant leaders, those who possess a lot of market share and are already selling quite handsomely into the space, are members. The very new and innovative technologies we also strongly encourage to participate, and largely it's based on enterprise feedback, right? Who are they issuing RFI, RFPs to for the purpose of deployment for this given technology space? And these tests are conducted usually annually, and usually it takes a while to build and to develop these, but the public test is at no fee or cost to the vendors who participate. And so everyone's encouraged to come and support it, though. We want to make certain that the technologies are deployed optimally and that this reflects the real-world use case of how a vendor would engage and support an enterprise with deployment of their product technologies. So let's dive into today's topic, Web Application Firewalls. This technology is arguably one of the most advanced and capable that enterprises deploy today for the purpose of web-facing applications. In particular, they're often either within the data center or in the DMZ or even potentially in the cloud. There's a host of ways that you can approach this challenge. But Web Application Firewalls serve a very unique role by being able to flexibly protect against a host or a variety of attacks that are very nuanced and potentially only slightly outside the bounds of how an application is to behave. An extra character here, an extra space there. These things are not simple to write signature-based protection methods for in the traditional IPS or NGFW sense. And this is why WAFs are such a crucial technology in the enterprise architectural portfolio. So they're protecting some of the most valuable assets that an organization has, as it's both the customer-facing or the frankly public-facing technologies and applications that are interfaced through. So whether it's simply informational portals for the website and download information, et cetera, all the way up through full commerce stacks and or database mechanics that are used for B2B transactions and more, Web Application Firewalls are the perfect tool in this portfolio stack to protect against these applications. And that goes to directly how we compose the test and what types of attacks that we looked at. So we constantly engage with and watch the OWASP community, in particular the OWASP top 10, which are the most commonly attacked or the most common types of attacks against these types of applications. And so this 2.1 version of our Web Application Firewalls group test incorporates all 10 categories of attack types. And in order to assess them accurately, we actually develop the application stack here within our labs, and we synthesize the attack means in a controlled environment and have the vendor technologies deployed between. And so there were over 70 techniques used across the top 10 categories, and that the vendors were, of course, also supportive and configured their technologies as an enterprise would, or as they would for an enterprise out in the real world. And so, this test is an incredibly complex one, but we're very confident and proud of the results set, and certainly, feel that it was highly representative of the attacks that these technologies are meant to support and to protect against. The results of all that testing, in essence, becomes distilled down into a series of reports. And for us to go through all of them here on the webinar would be challenging, as I think that there's somewhere around 650 to 700 pages total between everything within the entire Web Application Firewall group set. But very quickly, to make it simple to understand, there's in essence 3 layers of reports that compose the group test results. The bottom layer that you see there is the individual product test reports. These are per vendor, per product submission, and they go into great detail as to the version of the product, the platform, the performance of the product in a configured state, and how it performed against all the different attack categories. And these are broken out into each of those OWASP 10 groupings, and within each of those explicit categories, there's a number of attack types that are further measured and scored. And so, those test reports provide that level of detail on a per product basis across all of the tested technologies in the group test. Those results are further aggregated into what we refer to as comparative reports. These focus on a type of technology component that are critical buying decisions for enterprises today, and they include security, effectiveness, performance, and TCO, as well as at the top of that, we aggregate into the security value map comparative, which feeds the specific graphic that if you're familiar with NSS Labs, you've probably witnessed before. And we'll show you that for this test here in a few minutes. But just very quickly, I wanted to ensure that everybody could understand the structure of the reports. In addition, the group test definitions, there's the product cost, which is the cost of acquisition, technology, the fees for labor, maintenance, et cetera, as well as the labor costs for deployment. Security effectiveness is the attack rates, times divisions, and stability, reliability. And then the last is the per protected megabit. And we take a 3-year model of the TCO, composite of the costs, and divide it by security effectiveness times the throughput. And this yields a fair and equitable measure by which we can compare all of the members of a specific group test set. The graphic I mentioned a moment ago is the security value map, or SVM graphic. In particular, the first metric on there is the security effectiveness, which is, again, basically the security capabilities and the stability or resiliency of the device to withstand either sustained attack or failover during an attack, so that it does not impact your business operations. That's on the right, as you see here, highlighted in blue now. Now, across the middle there with the dotted line is the average. This moves according to the test and according to how the vendors within the test perform. So this line moves according to the market, and in any given year, it can move up and down depending on what the attackers are doing in that year, and thus how we update the harness to reflect that attack type, and how a vendor's own capabilities are reflected in the engineering prowess and ultimately their device's performance to protect against those attacks. In addition, along the bottom is the cost component, as I mentioned a moment ago. And that's the composite of both the throughput of the device, and so what it does is it normalizes, the size of an appliance that's brought in from a throughput perspective based on the cost of that throughput. And so, it allows a vendor to submit, a device that's, say, 1 gig versus 10 gig, and it normalizes that according to, 1/10 or commensurately that appropriate balance. And so this is we've found to be the most fair and equitable way to normalize the capabilities and throughput of the device. And this is not vendor stated, this is NSS tested. So we run a rigorous series of performance tests against the device after it's configured to assess its true throughput capabilities and the capacity ultimately as it would be deployed in your organization, which includes not just throughput, but also application round trip, latency implications, et cetera. And that's listed on the bottom of the graphic there for just reference purposes so that you can interpret this. As there's a lot of information that goes into this graphic, and sometimes when people glance at it, they're like, neat, but there's a lot to it. Further, just the last point, you'll note that there's 4 quadrants, or Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. In Q1, that's the recommended overall category. Q2 is caution. Q4 is actually security recommended, though it's not often the same value measure, so perhaps it's a bit more expensive, but it performed reasonably well at security. And then Q3 is the cautionary quadrant that we have in the graphic. So with that, let's go ahead and bring up the graphic itself for this test. So I get that it's a bit of an eye chart. I'll solve that for you in a moment. But as you can see, it was a fierce field of competitors this year in the WAF space. I'm very pleased to see that so many did well against a very broad category, or broad number of attacks across the entire OWASP top 10. So this is good news for folks looking to add a WAF technology to their portfolio. But let's zoom in a little bit into that recommended quadrant so I can share with you the details. And so you'll see of the submitted vendors, of the tested vendors, F5, Radware, Fortinet, and Citrix are all in that quadrant. But note very keenly where Citrix landed. The fact that they are farthest to the right means that they have the most compelling value for the the tested device, as well as the capabilities, as well as they're as far up on the graphic as others, and so they performed at or above all others in the test from a security efficacy perspective, in addition to that incredibly compelling price and/or value point. So, it's clear that Citrix has once again performed very admirably in the tests. They were also recommended in the 1-point group tests when we ran them last, and it's a testament, I think, to Citrix's capabilities as well as focus. But I won't steal any of their thunder. So with that, let me go ahead and quickly demonstrate. There's more details here on our site. Please reach out. There's an email there at the bottom, info@nsslabs.com. Should you have any questions that come up, either if you're thinking of them after this webinar ends or soon. But again, thank you for your time. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the team.
Thanks, Mike, for that. We're very happy here at Citrix to get your recommendation and to see how our Web Application Firewall came out so well in the testing. And we really appreciate your update there on your approach and the way that you actually prepare these tests and run them. So what we want to do here is we want to talk a little bit more about the Citrix Web Application Firewall, but position that a little bit in our whole portfolio of security solutions that we have in Citrix. And so what I'm going to do here is we have a number of members of the team. I've got myself and Darshan and Lena, and we're going to go through some of the features and functionality of the Web Application Firewall, but as I say, position it in terms of the bigger context of what's happening in the world of security and application access. So this picture shows something that I think is pretty familiar to everybody on this call. And the world is evolving, and on the one hand, applications and application workloads can be anywhere. There's web apps, there's applications that are in the data center, there's applications in private cloud and public cloud environments. And really the security perimeter is shifting. It's no longer just at the edge of the data center. And applications are getting more complex in terms of the way they're developed. And all of these things mean that the left-hand side of this picture is getting more and more complex. And then on the other side, users expect to access their applications from anywhere, any device, from the branch, from home, from mobile devices. So really we have this world where, as I mentioned, the security perimeter is completely dynamic and it's shifting, and it's no longer just a kind of physical barrier that you can manage. So our answer to that is to develop what we call the Citrix Secure Digital Perimeter, which is a set of services that protect the user and effectively virtually surround your apps and network and provide visibility and control. And it can minimize and hide the attack surfaces as you move your data and applications beyond your data center, and it can deliver that kind of user-centric experience without interfering or compromising with security. So as part of the Citrix SDP, we have a set of features and functionality to do with access and identity and access management. We also have a set of features which cover actually reliable delivery of applications, including SD-WAN and traffic management solutions. But what we want to talk about here is the security part of the SDP portfolio. So this picture just kind of summarizes how we think about security. So at the top we have user and access security, and that includes the gateway functionality. So secure web gateway and access and single sign-on. And down at the bottom we have the application security, which is what we're really focusing on today. And then in the middle, covering all of that, is our approach to analytics, where we can spot patterns and apply that across the portfolio of services, but in a way that a single individual user wouldn't be able to spot a pattern, and the kind of information that you can extract from the kind of machine learning and pattern recognition technology. So this is the overall picture, and as I say, we're focusing in today on the application and infrastructure security part. down at the bottom. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Darshan and ask him to take us through the application security portfolio and focus in on the Web Application Firewall.
Thank you, George. Application and infrastructure security is a critical part of our secure digital perimeter as an SDP strategy. Now, Citrix has offered a robust application and infrastructure protection solution for more than a decade. Whether it is about business continuity against DDoS attacks, data center resiliency, availability and disaster recovery, protection against application layer attacks, or preventing data theft and loss, our NetScaler and Web Application Firewall solution are considered number one in the industry. So let's take a closer look into what technologies make up our application security portfolio today. Let's start with the network layer. DNS is core to the availability of an enterprise application infrastructure, and NetScaler offers a robust and extremely scalable solution to protect against DNS-based attacks. It is used by many large enterprises and web-scale customers to protect their DNS infrastructure. Coming on to DDoS protection, NetScaler was built from day one to protect against DDoS attacks. As NetScaler protects application infrastructures, it is in a unique position to detect and stop attacks coming into the data center. NetScaler not only protects against network-level DDoS attacks like SYN floods, ping floods, erroneous and bad packets, Fraggle, etc., but it also provides application layer protection against slow HTTP attacks. It provides a contextual access control policy and can use CAPTCHA and other methods to offer multi-factor authentication and add that to the workflow for better protection against user credential misuse. Now, a critical part of application security is encryption. And as you know, our ADC solutions and WAF are really well known for our SSL price performance ratio and our ability to scale. NetScaler today supports the latest industry ciphers and does especially well in the ECC, that's elliptical curve cryptography cipher performance with our latest platforms. In addition, NetScaler makes it very easy to manage an SSL environment by offering a default profile that allows a customer to easily get an A+ in SSL Labs rating. Not only that, we continue to provide thought leadership in this critical area and are the first vendor to offer beta for TLS 1.3, which is being designed as the latest security protocol. In addition, with the introduction of SSL Insights as part of our management and analytics solution, we've been helping customers understand their SSL environments across applications in terms of the ciphers and protocols used. And what this allows customers to do is figure out and troubleshoot and discover applications or attacks that might be downgrading some of the cipher exchanges that are being done on the network. So this really allows customers to strengthen their security posture using the latest SSL protocols and ciphers. Now coming on to the web application attacks. Now, web application attacks are extremely common and very effective. One of the well-known hacks that happened last year that led to 150 million plus personal records were allegedly, stolen was allegedly a web application attack. According to some 2016 vendor reports, SQL injection, which is a web application layer attack, is responsible for more than half of the attacks that come through at the HTTP layer. Coming to Citrix's offerings, we have industry's best price performance and scalable WAF solution. We have WAF solutions starting from a few megabits per second all the way to 44 gigabits per second performance in a single appliance. Now, more than 2,000 customers, including some of the largest telcos, financials, retailers, as well as consumer tech companies, trust Citrix NetScaler Web Application Firewall to protect the critical application infrastructure and payment gateways. Our WAF provides an easy-to-use protection against the standard OWASP top 10. It has built-in IP reputation-based protection at no additional charge, offers more than 1,300 built-in signatures that are continuously updated as new CVEs and new vulnerabilities are discovered. And it also offers customers an ability to virtually patch their application when a vulnerability in the code developed is found through a vulnerability testing tool. WAF also helps many customers meet PCI DSS auditing requirements. With that, let me hand it over to Lena to go over a little bit more detail into the different models of protection as well as the unique differentiation we offer in terms of our analytics.
Thank you, Darshan. As you all can see, NetScaler focus is on security, has been and is. But what makes us unique? Let's talk about how are we different and what exactly is our solution.
Okay.
Cybersecurity model, it combines best of two, negative and positive. Negative security model protects from known threats and really easy to deploy, while positive security model protects from zero-day attacks, 100% RFC compliance, proven in industry for many years. But in real life, applications are not 100% RFC compliant, and that is where our unique learning feature can help, as we dynamically learn application behavior that you can enforce. So negative and positive security model together will bring you hybrid security model that protects against known and unknown threats. Let's dig inside. So think about it. You can mix and match security. With signature, right, we have auto update, and with Nitro APIs, as I mentioned, full automation, you can do totally hands-on your signature update. You can also create your own signatures and customize. And we have full integration with vulnerability scanners. And we support and have converter with number of them. Transmicro, Qualys, Sensei, HP Web Inspect, name it. And again, you can fully automate the process. But it only takes about 30 seconds to convert all vulnerabilities to NetScaler signatures. Now, from mix and match, if you look into it, we have point is IP reputation that, first of all, is free of charge for you. With Web Application Firewall, you're entitled to IP reputation, and you can use it across all features on NetScaler, not only specifically in Web Application Firewall. Now, let's talk about visibility. Our NetScaler management and analytics system is a single pane of glass, and with security dashboard, you can easily see which applications you need to address. What are your top clients, right? Where attacks are coming from. And as we talked in the beginning, it's not only layer 7. It goes through layer 4 to layer 7. And it does include IP reputation here as well. Now I'm looking at security dashboard, right? And how do I know what applications to address first? Actually, system tells me with Security Insight. Security Insight is our powerful behavior security analytics tool that's built into Mass. And there are two main parameters to look into. Threat index, it represents the level of threat exposure attacks on your applications. And safety index represents the level of protection configured on NetScaler. We can analyze the data across all your applications, separating critical security issues from general noise. You can see how secure are your applications, how frequently have they been attacked, which locations these attacks are coming from, and if there's a trend in those attacks. NetScaler Security Insight flags configurations and issues that indicate vulnerabilities and compliance gaps, so you can quickly focus your attention.
Thank you, Lena, for walking us through the detail on the security posture and what different capabilities we have there. Now, in terms of form factors and packaging, with our software first and one-to-any strategy, NetScaler WAF is available in various form factors, including appliances, virtual appliances. It supports a multi-tenant, appliance like our SDX, and is available as a cloud-hosted service as well. Not only that, it's also available in most cloud infrastructure service providers like AWS and Azure. Customers can leverage their ADC to add WAF or deploy WAF standalone. And WAF is also included in the Platinum license for our hardware form factors. Now, over the past year, we have invested significantly in innovating our pricing and licensing models. With customers moving to hybrid multi-cloud environments, they demand the flexibility to deploy their capacity wherever their applications are moving. And so now, WAF is available as a pooled license capacity, whereby a customer can choose to dynamically deploy that capacity on-prem, on a physical appliance, virtual appliance, or in an infrastructure as a service provider in the cloud as their businesses and applications evolve. In summary, NetScaler WAF, Web Application Firewall, is really number one in terms of price-performance ratio and scale, as well as its security effectiveness. And in addition, with Mass and Security Insight, customers now have an easy-to-use operations dashboard that's intuitive and can manage a hybrid deployment through the same pane of glass with our management analytics service. So with that, let me hand it over to George to close out the overall discussion.
Thanks, Darshan. Well, so hopefully that gives everybody a good feel for the security portfolio that we have here in Citrix and how that fits into the SDP, the Citrix SDP. We would encourage you to take a look at the web and look at the material that we have there. You can download a copy of the NSS Labs report from our website. You can also look at a number of white papers and find all sorts of information, not only about our Web Application Firewall, but the full portfolio of services that we have in the Citrix SDP. We would also encourage you to take a look at trying out the products we're talking about today. You can download a version of the software and try it out in your environment. And you can also access the management and analytics system either by downloading it or by registering for the cloud version to try out the security, visibility, and analytics as well. So with that, that's the end of the formal presentation that we've got today. So I'll hand over to Jeremy and see if there's any questions for us.
Thank you, George. Yes, we have a lot of questions here. Before we move into the Q&A, I just want to remind our audience that if you haven't asked your question already, you can submit in the Ask Question area on your screen. Simply type your question into the text box and hit Submit. We'll get to all the questions we can on the line, and we will answer any that we don't address live in a follow-up session via email. So I'm going to go right into the questions, and our first question is for Mike for NSS Labs. Mike, can you tell us what type of security solutions you do test? What other types of security solutions you do test?
Yeah, no, I think it's implied a lot, but it's a good question. Thanks, Jeremy. So, we've been, testing security technologies now for a long time, and clearly the portfolio continues to grow. But in general, all appliance-based technologies that most enterprises deploy, as well as increasingly a number of the agent-based ones, are in our portfolio. For example, the breach systems space, both detection and protection, NGFW, IPS technologies, data center IPS and data center firewalls, a number of other campus augmentations, advanced endpoint, and we're looking to, of course, also expand that further with endpoint detection and response and more this year. So, we take our role in the industry quite seriously. We believe that, the diligence applied in the processing and the development of the tests reflects both enterprise need as well as the most accurate testing that can be conducted, in a fair and equitable manner for all participants. And so, we definitely are always looking for feedback and ideas as to the next test, so that info@nsslabs.com email that I mentioned earlier, if somebody's got another technology they'd like to inquire about, please shoot us a note. We'd love to talk to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Great answer. I have a question for Darshant. How is the Citrix Web App Firewall priced and packaged?
So, thank you, Jeremy. As we covered slightly in our prepared conference presentation, Citrix WAF is available in many different form factors, including a physical appliance, a virtual appliance, and in different hypervisors. And it's really priced based on the throughput as well as the scale. So typically that's the on-prem version. It's also available in infrastructure as a service providers, AWS as well as Azure. And similarly, it's really dependent on the kind of scale your customer wants to use. As a cloud service, it's based on throughput as well as the number of points of presence that a customer requires for best customer experience.
Excellent. Thank you. I hope that answered the question. I have another question for Lena. How easy is it to set up the Citrix WAF?
Thank you. Good question. We talk about what's unique about our solution. We talk about how comprehensive is it. So how easy is it with Wizard on Web Application Firewall? You can be up and running in a couple minutes. It can be really, really simple. Also, NetScaler Management and Analytics System can help you to configure Web Application Firewall. And we look at Security Insights, where you can see all the analytics, and it can prompt you what needs to be configured as situation changes.
Excellent. That is good to hear. We don't want to make things too complicated. And then I have another question here. This one could be for either Mike or Darshant. How do you see the WAF market evolving over the next few years?
I can go first and then let Darshant comment, because I know that there's also some fantastic insight there. But briefly, the WAF market, and frankly the world's dependence on the digital economy and the advances of connected web applications will only further drive the importance and criticality of such a technology. I think as apps continue to become more distributed, that more often enterprises will look to software or service-based support to augment, the heavyweight DC technologies that they already have. but the demand I see only increasing still. So, it's a crucial technology for a critical role for which there's no alternative approach. So, Darshan, do you want to chime in?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Completely agree, right? I mean, I think as the application layer attacks are increasing and the scale of the applications and the distributed nature of them in a hybrid multi-cloud environment, the need for a web application firewall that offers a consistent security posture and policy across that on-prem infrastructure as a service or just different data center environments becomes critical from a customer point of view and operations point of view. So that's one thing that we are seeing, continue to evolve in the marketplace. The scale required, especially with the, enhancements in terms of SSL with TLS 1.3, with the elliptical curve cryptography, the scale and performance required is going up substantially, right? And so the firepower in terms of CPU and SSL processing is something that is becoming a critical factor in how customers decide what vendor to choose from an application firewall standpoint. In terms of the other trends, I think the automated attacks and automated bot management is becoming critical as well as analytics is playing a key role in terms of figuring out zero-day attacks and anomalous fraudulent behavior. In addition, we are also seeing in the cloud world, so if you think about as a service offering, we are seeing customers start to evolve and understand the importance of the service consolidation, right? So in these kind of scenarios, of course, our web application firewall service continues to be a critical piece as customers continue to evolve in their hybrid deployments. And lastly, as the application architectures have been evolving to be more microservices oriented, there's a lot of requirement, not just for north-south traffic, but east-west traffic as well, in terms of the web application firewall providing protections in the API world. So API gateways, a lot of these are, again, SSL encrypted. And so you start seeing a lot more transactions per second when APIs use SSL to reach out to the different microservices, and protecting them requires, a slightly, more scalable and interesting approach. And that continues to be something that, we look at as we develop our WAF roadmap.
Fantastic. I don't have any other questions right now, but I'm going to say this was a really fabulous session. Thank you so much to our speakers for presenting such an engaging topic. It brings us to the end of our webinar. A quick reminder, you can learn more about the Citrix WAF by visiting citrix.com/appfirewall. And you can check out and register for other upcoming webinars and events by going to citrix.com/events. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.